What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. A little later getting going today. Grandson spends the night last night and, of course, messes up with your morning routine because you gotta, he likes to make coffee with me and, etc. And he wants a 3D printed snake. So I'm going to 3D print him a snake because he makes the hissing noise as he sees our snakes. So he wants to do that. So we're having some fun today. And I've already had a sip of coffee because I've already, the other thing that he likes to do, he's 18 months. So one of the things he likes to do is he calls me Pop. So I'll hold him and I'll take a sip of coffee. And then he takes a sip from his sippy cup. And then I'll take a sip of coffee and he takes a sip from, so he's trying to learn how to, drink coffee. So we're drinking coffee together. So anyway, it's been fun. It's been a fun morning. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about today is this is always interesting to me. And of course, over the last couple of weeks, we've really seen it, especially with the review video that we did of that guitar and all the testing surrounding it and all the everything. And even, even talking about pickups, even talking about, even the pickups I put in that guitar yesterday that, we demoed that amp with, and even talking about that amp, because that amp's really interesting. That Hendrickson amp, it is a huge amp, even though it's physically small. It just doesn't belong in the same sentence as like a practice amp. But it's hard for people to get that, right? Because it's not normal. Pickups, obviously people think they know lots of stuff about pickups. Guitars, brands, all that kind of stuff. Everything. We gain knowledge over time, and it's pretty cool. I dig it a lot. But the problem is that there's so much certainty with how much people stick to things. It's really weird. It's not weird. I guess it's a natural human thing. But what you know about what you know, how did you learn it? Did you learn it from watching YouTube videos? Did you learn it from forums? Did you learn it from somebody else in a comment section? And why are you so certain that what that piece of knowledge is, or that conviction that you have about that instrument or that brand is right? If it was earned through broad, varied experience over years and years of trying all kinds of stuff, that's cool. But that is not the same as making a choice 20 years ago and then sticking with it and defending that same choice for 20 years either. That's not the same thing either. So everything in this guitar stuff just becomes, this is the way and there's no other way. And there's rarely, people don't even look at like a context of like how something is used, philosophies of use case scenarios, however you want to say that. But what you realize if you continue to actually want to learn about this stuff is that there's so many variables that it's crazy, and it makes it fun because you're always learning something, right? You learn something every day if you actually want to learn. Now, if you're just trying to defend beliefs, then you just end up being a dork. But if you're actually wanting to learn, then, or or even if you're not wanting to learn on purpose, but you're allowing your experiences to reshape opinions and reshape beliefs as you go because you experience new things, that's really cool, man. That makes you an awesome person. That makes you a well-rounded person. Because the thing is that, especially in guitar stuff, the context of the situation will oftentimes determine how something is used and what is right in that situation. And it might be a different thing for lots of different things. Now the physics and things like that about a guitar, you can nail those down pretty good, but they're also very simple concepts. We talk about this all the time, that you don't need to overcomplicate them, right? But people will often attack these subjects, like they'll dive into these subjects with such authority, um, without telling anybody or without explaining, like, what have you actually done? How have you, um, you know, what is your actual experience with this? Because it sounds like you're just regurgitating what you heard in the comments section. Can you back up what you're saying right now? And not everything needs to be hit with that level of, like, I think some of the things, well, you didn't really test that right. Well, okay. I didn't test it with all of the scientific, because people could say the same thing about me. Like, I'm not testing stuff, the way they would do it. Yeah. Okay. So I might not have available to me every scientific method or the time to do it, to test it all the way out. Like I'm some kind of lab, right? Because I don't have that equipment. I'm using a $20 moisture meter. I'm using I'm using the tools that I have, in my drawer. And so these are the results that are available to me. But the thing is that one of the things that I think we all should do, that's something I really try to do, is test what's important to context, right? So what I mean by that is, if you're trying to learn something about something and be an expert about something, you have to understand the context within which you are working. For example, capacitors. This is a big one because people want to argue about it. Well, sometimes the capacitor really matters and the material really matters. If we're tuning, when you used to tune a radio, like you used to turn the dial, right? And the little thing would go across, for those of you of an age that knows what that means. On the FM dial, when you open up that radio, there was this two rods and there was a bunch of plates on it. And when you turned it, those plates meshed within each other. Those were capacitors. And they were finely tuned and the material was specific because you're doing something very specific. On a radio transmitter, when you are filtering and working with radio frequencies that are much, much higher than audio that we can hear with our ear, the specificity with which you engineer those things it's insane. My dad is a radio transmitter certified blah 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 guru, like builds them. He's retired now, and so, like, I've been around this stuff a bunch, and I will tell you, in that situation, a lot of that stuff really matters, but in a guitar, it just doesn't, right? So you could say you weren't specific enough in a test, but it doesn't. You don't have to be, because guitars are kind of dumb. They're just dumb circuits. They're just not that. They're not that. They're just not that complicated. And even pickup engineering, yes, there's a lot to it, but the changes that are made don't do what people think they do, and they don't interact the way they think they do. So unless you actually do this every day and have a bunch of database to pull from, all these little things that people argue about are just kind of pointless because you don't have the full context of it. And so here's the question. Have you done the testing yourself, or have you just heard about it on the internet? Have you owned one guitar from a brand and watched 50 videos to get the rest of your opinion on that brand? Repeating a belief over and over is not expertise, right? Repeating what you've heard over and over is not expertise. Even if you allege that the person that you got it from was an expert, because they may or may not be, it's not expertise. Getting likes from people that agree with you is not verification of your knowledge, right? Because a video has a lot of views on it doesn't mean that it's correct. Sometimes just because everybody knows such and such doesn't mean that it's right. Sometimes it hasn't been questioned. Sometimes it's just accepted to be accepted. Sometimes things change. Technology changes. material sciences change all the time. Like what a guitar could be made out of in 2026 is different than what it could be made out of in 1946. But people don't think about that. They just go back to 1946, right? That's an example of it. And then you move this over to brand loyalty. And hey, man, if you have repeated positive experiences with a brand and you love that, or even if you've, I always bring up Land Rover. Land Rover's a funny one because you got to know how to do like a vintage Buick head gasket. If you're a Land Rover guy, and you got to know, like for the stuff that I was into, you got to know, mid like late century BMW electronics because that's what that thing was, and you got to know because the cars were kind of parts bin cars, so you got to know that. Oh, I can get a cheaper one of these that was used in this Ford. This, you got to know all that stuff, and so it's sort of a funny thing. Like, yeah, okay, so the car wasn't that great, really, but I still love it, and I think it's neat. So there's maybe some of that, right? But I admit that to you. I would tell you, don't buy one of them. You know what I mean? I wouldn't go around saying it's the best thing ever in the whole world. I think a Toyota Land Cruiser is probably the best thing ever in the whole world when it really comes to like the overlanding stuff that I was into. But it's okay. My buddy had a Toyota Land Cruiser and I wouldn't go in there. I really like my Land Rover. It doesn't matter. Like, so yes, I'm going to stick to my kind of crappier but really cool thing. So there could be an element to that, but I also am not going to preach that it's the best to everybody, and then disparage people when they don't agree with me, because I know that it's not perfect, right? There's a lot of things a lot of reasons where brand loyalty can come into play with this, right? Like, if a company's treated you well, even if the product's not that great, but the customer service is awesome and they're really trying, hey man, I'll give you credit for that. I think that's awesome. But sometimes the brand loyalty is not based on continuing experience. Sometimes it's based on the identity that you got from how you feel about it, right? I see this often, a lot. This is probably a big one that I see more than anything. I see, I bought a Gibson in 2015, which that's the bad year, and it was terrible. So therefore, they're all bad. I bought a Harley Benton 2 years ago, and it was awesome. Therefore, they're all awesome. I bought a Fender a couple years ago, and the fretwork was crap, so they're all bad. You could insert any brand. But those are the kind of the big ones that people, glom onto things based on, I'm in a group on Facebook and everyone hates this. I'm in a group on Facebook and everyone loves this. I have 3 friends that have it. I might not have it, but I have 3 friends that have it and they have had this or that experience. And then once you form that opinion and then somebody criticizes that opinion for some reason, whether it's justified or not, but it could be justified, then you take that personally, like it's a criticism of you personally. Because now they're attacking your knowledge and your right, but it's not really knowledge. Okay, maybe it's knowledge, but it's not right. There's nothing really to base that on. You're not evaluating a product anymore. You're protecting a decision that you made so that you look good. You don't want to look bad. Oh, I might have made the wrong decision with this. Nobody wants to say that, right? And then if things change and you're stuck to that decision, then you really look like an idiot. Like all the people that think Gibsons suck. Honestly, they don't. They're pretty dang good. I've been paying attention, and they're pretty all right. I'm not saying they're all perfect, but they're pretty all right. So, you might not be able to admit that your preferred brand has some faults or that your brand that you think is terrible has gotten better, right? Like those kinds of things. So why do people stick to this stuff? I don't get it. I don't get it because all you're doing is you're just limiting yourself. right? You're just limiting yourself. And just because you've thought something or known something or heard something for a long time doesn't make it right. One of the most entertaining things, I laugh at these guys every time. I've been doing this for I've been a guitar tech. People hit me with this all the time because they don't know how old I am. So I've been playing for 40 years. I've been a guitar tech for 45 years. And you cut a guitar apart. And so now you're an idiot. And I've been a guitar tech for 45 years and blah, 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 blah. You haven't been a guitar tech. You fixed some of your friends' guitars sometimes, right? Like, be honest with yourself. Not to mention that just because you've done something for 30, 40, 50 years doesn't mean that it's right. You could have just, all that means is you've been doing it wrong for longer if it's wrong. That just means you're more stuck in your ways than I am. If I've only been doing something for a year and I find out that something's wrong, it's easy for me to change because I'm not stuck. You're stuck. And it just makes you look more an idiot. I've owned hundreds of guitars. I blah, 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 blah. Okay, it might be relevant, but it might not be at all relevant to the point being made or the thing being discussed at all. You're just trying to tell us how smart you are. And you're probably not actually that smart, to be honest with you. You're probably not. You know? The way I look at that a lot of times, because I will look, like a lot of people will hit me with these bona fides, and I'm like, let me go see. And there's no website. There's no Facebook page. There's no customer base of any kind. If you're in business in 2026, it's pretty easy to find your real credentials. It's pretty easy, right? And I don't always do that. Like, I don't go searching down everybody who says I've been doing this for 30 years, but every once in a while there's been I don't want to, calling a gentleman might be too generous on Facebook lately, who's been really slagging me super hard. And yeah, he's nobody. You know, it's okay. I mean, I'm not saying he's nobody. He's probably got a great family and he's probably got friends that really like him. I'm not saying bad things about the guy. I'm just saying he has nowhere to speak from when it comes to the experience with instruments. Which is most of the time. You know. So, you know, if you're in your basement, you know, eating your generic Cheetos and working on your Harley Benton, and you're like, look, man, I know how to do this, and I've been doing it for so many years. That time doesn't correct bad assumptions. And here's the other thing. Many people can go through life parroting a process and never actually understand how it works. And then when a variable gets thrown into the mix, do not understand how to deal with the variable because they have not understood fully the actual process. They've just been doing the thing. So just because you've been doing a thing for a long time doesn't mean you actually understand how it works. We see this a lot. This is a big one. This happens a lot. Now, that's not to say that we ever dismiss actual experience, because experience absolutely matters. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about trying to experience as many things as possible. Because understanding patterns and understanding things as you go, working with lots of guitars, it teaches you things that, you know, only having a couple of guitars doesn't teach you. I work with a lot of guitars, and I work with a lot of new guitars, and I work with a lot of inexpensive guitars and expensive guitars and all kinds of different. One of the things I really try to do is have as many different bridge types as possible, as many different, all that stuff as possible. That's really important, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. You know, I know there's people that are just a Strat guy or a Tele guy or a Les Paul guy or whatever, or Harley Benton guy or Gibson guy or Fender guy or whatever the brand is. Ibanez, ESP, doesn't matter. But you know what? You should broaden your horizons a little bit if you can. Because when you have those experiences, it's really helpful to understand the context surrounding something, and it will help you understand the thing that's in the middle that's the actual problem. And, or the actual issue, or the actual how something actually works, how a pickup works. Man, I got drugged over an out of phase internally humbucker. And people are like, you don't know how that works. That's impossible. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You are an actual idiot. And not to be the person that we're talking about today, but do you know what I do for a living? And I don't just mean like in the comment section. Obviously, I share this every day. I love it when people give me a hard time about pickups. I love it. It's awesome. You don't know anything about pickups, or you don't know anything about metallurgy. Okay, let's go. You don't know anything about, I don't know. If you say you don't know anything about motorbikes, you got another thing coming, buddy. I have some life experience about some stuff that I don't always share. And so, try not to be that guy, but at the same time, there's a couple areas you go down that road, you better be ready. Because I love what I love. That being said, if somebody comes along with something new, either technology that then reapplies what we know or reforms what we know, I have to be ready to go. I have to be ready to go, oh crap, I can't think that anymore because that new thing has now affected what we do. When a new material comes along, when a new method comes along, I've really AI, for example, or even this 3D printing stuff. I was like so against it for a long time, not because I thought it was bad, but because it was just too complicated and too the digital stuff. I put it off for a long time, and then I love it. Now so being open to that stuff is really, really important, because if you don't move beyond the beliefs that you hold now when you are presented with something new, it's really self-destructive, because they become part of your identity. Then anytime anybody says anything different than what you think, then you feel threatened. And I know you don't feel that. I feel this way. But that's what it's doing. It's threatening who you are. And when you avoid further experience, you're just tightening up that box around you, and your mom's basement is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then when you get in the comments section and spread it like a virus, it's bad for everybody. Well, I did this for 30 years, and that person's wrong because blah, blah, blah. And you're like, when I read that, and I'm going, man, I hate that, because now these other 3 people are being misled as well. And one of the things I've stopped doing recently is trying to help with that in the comments, because it doesn't help anything. It just makes people, So you're going to see me in the comment section a lot less, because I'm just like, I can't. Personally, I don't want to invest my own self into that, because it doesn't do anything. And I don't want to create a division between people. Just let them work it out. You know what I mean? Hey, buddy. Hi. So if you have a strong opinion about something, if you have a strong belief about something, it should come with a door that kind of is open to, hey man, if someone comes in here and it changes this up, I should be ready. You know what I mean? I think that's really important. And I know that there are people that are going to get a comment to this video and say, well, that's not what you do. You have stuck to blah, 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 blah. And I would challenge you. I would literally, and I genuinely mean this. In fact, I would make tomorrow's video about this if you wanted me to. Get in the comments and tell me where I've done that. And get in the comments and tell me where I have not reformed an opinion based on. And I bet you, and you might find some that I have not, that I need to relook at. And I would be totally open to that. But my guess would be that most things that you have found in that category that you think that I am holding my guns to and will not change are kind of fall in a couple of categories. One, the science is the science and it's easy. Okay. How a capacitor works, how a whatever, top wrapping tension, all those things. Okay, whatever. We can dive into those things if you want. When it comes to something like how I feel about Harley Bentons or how I feel about certain inexpensive guitar brands that I don't believe need to exist, I have reasons. And we could actually talk about those if you're willing to have the conversation and not just be one of these people that jumps in, whoa, that's the point. The point is be open to the conversation. I am open to the conversation. And I think you should be too. And if that happens, then guitar world is a totally better place.